Welcome to the Korea Pro Podcast, your weekly guide to understanding the most pressing and complicated developments shaping South Korea. We're your hosts, Jungmin Kim,
John Lei,
and Joon Ha Park of Korea Pro.
Go beyond headlines as we explain not just what happened, but also what really matters and why it matters.
If you monitor South Korea for work or just trying to keep up, you're in the right place.
This is the Korea Pro Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro Podcast. It is now Thursday, August 21st, and we're recording a little earlier than usual. It is now 11 a.m., and today in the studio, I have Joon Ha Park with me.
Hi. So just kicking things off then. So there's some news over the last few days regarding Westinghouse and KHNP. What's going on there?
Hoo boy. Okay, so back in January, KHNP and KEPCO, South Korea's two state-run energy companies, had an agreement with Westinghouse Electric over reactor designs and South Korea's nuclear power export ambitions. Now, for those of you who have not been keeping up with the news, what happened since 2022 was that Westinghouse Electric filed a lawsuit against these South Korean companies saying that their reactor designs, the APR 1400, was based on Westinghouse designs, and that it was illegal for South Korea to export this without either Westinghouse or the U.S. Energy Department's permission. And because of this back and forth, South Korea really struggled to export their nuclear reactors. Anytime there was some sort of agreement, Westinghouse was always there. And so in January this year, they came up with an agreement. Now, that agreement, the details of it was hush-hush. There was a strict non-disclosure agreement, and no one knew about it. Now, there was a news report about this in domestic South Korean media over the past few days. Now, there is no confirmation as of yet that these reports are true. But if they are true, it really explains why it was kept hush-hush and no one talked about the details.
Sure. What were the details?
Well, as it turns out, if these reports are true, what KHNP and KEPCO agreed was that for every year, for the next 50 years, if South Korea is able to export their nuclear reactors, then these South Korean companies absolutely must purchase about $650 million worth of goods and services from Westinghouse. Plus, they would also have to pay $175 million in royalties, technology royalties, to Westinghouse.
Which is incredibly one-sided.
So anytime South Korea exports any nuclear reactor for the next 50 years, they will have to spend at minimum $825 million per reactor that they export.
Goodness me. Okay, so...
Oh, but that's not the end. There's more. Apparently, this agreement also covers not just existing technology, but future technology that doesn't even exist yet.
And why was this deal struck?
Well, we agreed, we've talked about this many times. SMR, small modular reactors.
Right.
Now, this technology does not yet exist. But everyone knows that if you're if you're an energy company, if you are exporting nuclear reactors, this is the next goal in mind. But apparently, according to this agreement, what Westinghouse said is that these Korean companies must undergo what Westinghouse refers to as a technological independence review. Because Westinghouse has insisted this entire time that South Korea's APR 1400 reactors are based on their designs, they're saying, because you tried to export stuff that belongs to us, we get the right to check whether your future tech, which has not even been invented yet, contains any proprietary technology.
Which seems...
Again,
not
very
so fair.
one-sided.
Yeah.
So, this basically gives Westinghouse oversight on technology that doesn't even exist yet. And again, that's not all. Apparently, there's even more. So, for every new reactor that gets built, a reactor still needs nuclear fuel to work. So apparently, again, according to these reports, if South Korea successfully export a nuclear reactor to the Czech Republic or to Saudi Arabia, then Westinghouse gets to provide 100% of the nuclear fuel. And for all other regions, Westinghouse can provide 50% of the nuclear fuel.
Right.
And so oh my God, if this report is true, if this is accurate, then basically this comes down to being a slave contract.
Right.
For the next 50 years, KHNP and KEPCO is nothing more than a Westinghouse subsidiary.
Right. So it begs the question, what were the negotiations and what were the negotiators thinking?
Well, that's what the current ruling party is saying. Now, when this agreement was signed, the Democratic Party was not the ruling party.
No.
It was the PPP under the Yoon administration. So that's what the DP is saying right now. The Democratic Party lawmakers are saying, we need to find out who made these agreements, how these agreements came into place, if they are real, and if they broke any sort of South Korean laws. Now, can South Korea actually get out of this agreement? Well, while nothing is impossible, it will take years of renegotiation. It will take a lot of money. They will need to accelerate significantly on research and developments to find indigenous reactor designs. And even then, for the next 50 years, Westinghouse will have oversight to check how independent these designs are.
Sure.
So at the same time, this is also turning out to be an amazing political cudgel that the Democratic Party can use against the PPP.
Absolutely, yeah.
If this turns out to be true, this means that the South Korean ruling party at the time, the PPP, was so subservient to Westinghouse, was so desperate to get out of these lawsuits, so desperate for nuclear exports, that they essentially accepted a chain around the country's neck for the next half century.
Just in addition, the Yoon administration, one of its main key policies was nuclear energy.
Exactly. And so autonomy? What autonomy? If this is true, the Democratic Party would be able to use this as a political cudgel against the PPP, saying not only were you incompetent, not only did you try to defend the president from leading a coup, you also sold out one of these countries' core export technologies. You are so incompetent and such sellouts that we should run the country permanently and essentially become the next Liberal Democratic Party, by which I mean I'm referring to the Japanese ruling party that maintained control of Japan for decades.
Of course, with different objectives. But at the same time, this sort of gives a bit of caveat going into the U.S. ROK summit that's coming up next week. So what's the sort of things that Lee Jae-myung will bring on the table related to this? Will he bring this onto the table? It's not confirmed yet. So does he have any support from his own presidential office of bringing it onto the table?
I don't think he can. There are just so many things that are already being discussed. They're going to be talking about USFK, about updating the alliance, making it more flexible, which already is a significant concession that South Korea is making. They're likely going to be talking about tariffs. And who knows what Donald Trump is going to say. The man is, he is erratic. And he can talk about anything that he wants. He can talk about Hillary Clinton for all we know. But if he talks about tariffs, if he insists on more concessions from South Korea, that alone is a significant amount of hot topic issues that Lee Jae-myung is dealing with. This is just fuel to the fire, which I don't think Lee Jae-myung can handle.
Right. So on the subject of summits then, so we've got Lee Jae-myung's frankly biggest summits coming up within the next week. So this weekend he'll be traveling to Japan, where he will be meeting with Lee-Ishiba for the first sort of single summit overseas for the first time. And then he'll be flying directly to Washington from Tokyo on the 24th. So what do you think we can expect from the Lee-Ishiba summit first?
Well, when it comes to Shigeru Ishiba, I think that the negotiations are going to go very well. Both sides have actually said conciliatory things toward each other. You monitored President Lee Jae-myung's National Liberation Day address.
Sure.
What exactly did he say about Japan?
Yeah, so it was nothing that would bring the ire or draw the ire of Japan's conservatives. Washington. As sort of Moon Jae-in's speech, or for domestic reasons, Yoon Suk-yeol's speech did bring up a lot of ire domestically. But for Lee Jae-myung's speech, he was incredibly moderate in his opinions.
Future-oriented partnership.
Future-oriented partnership. Japan is it's not it's non-negotiable. It is you can't ignore Japan as a compelling partner for the Republic of Korea, both economically and culturally. Of course, he did not mention the security frontier, since it is a National Liberation Day speech and it would be tactically obtuse. But of course, you saw him bring back the history issue, which was sort of frankly ignored by the Yoon Suk-yeol administration during their short-lived National Liberation Day addresses. I think he gave two during his presidency, but both of those presidencies emphasized the role of Japan as a security, economic, cultural partner instead of actually focusing on what traditionally most ROK presidents focus on, which is history.
Exactly.
And Lee Jae-myung brought that back. But of
not
course,
to the same extent as Moon Jae-in did.
He brought that back in a very toned-down approach. You're right. So he was talking about how even though we have all of these domestic issues, Japan should face them up front, and we should work towards mutually to make sure that history is confronted on both sides.
So it was a neat balance between Moon Jae-in and Yoon Suk-yeol. Now, for Ishiba's part, on the same day, he also gave a speech.
Right, yeah.
And in his speech, he actually used the word remorse.
Yeah, which is first time in over a decade.
Years.
Yeah.
First time in 13 years that a Japanese prime minister expressed remorse for Japan's occupation of not just Korea, but also its entire conduct during the Second World War.
But, of course, on the sideline, you also had Ishiba sort of fulfilling his role as sort of a Japanese conservative, sending ritual offerings to the Yasukuni Shrine, a Shinto shrine
that houses the Japan's war dead, including Class A war criminals
from World War II. And the frontrunner, or one of the frontrunners for the next Japanese prime minister position, I think it was Koizumi, the agriculture minister.
Shigeru Koizumi.
Yeah, he visited the Yasukuni Shrine, among other former sort of Japanese LDP politicians.
Now, I don't think Shigeru Koizumi is a frontrunner. I think there are many other people who can have that mantle. But yes, he is the son of a former Japanese prime minister, Junichiro Koizumi. And so yes, Koizumi himself visited the Yasukuni Shrine, but Ishiba himself did not. Yes, as you mentioned, he gave offerings to the shrine, but he did not go directly.
Yeah, he's been quite a vocal critic of politicians who sort of try and revise Japan's wartime history.
And so because Lee Jae-myung and Ishiba, they've been making conciliatory addresses, I think this summit that's coming up is actually been paved quite nicely. I don't expect to see any sort of bumpy talks. Sure, maybe Lee Jae-myung might again bring up this toned down mentions of historical responsibilities, but it's not going to be like Moon Jae-in, or he's not going to be expounding on South Korean court rulings for forced wartime labors. I don't think it's going to be confrontational.
Right, and there is some sort of speculation and media speculation. Also, Lee Jae-myung just mentioned it in Yomiuri Shimbun interview exclusive that he did just a couple of days ago, and he did sort of mention and praise the 1998 joint declaration from then ROK President Kim Dae-jung, if I'm not mistaken, and also I think it was Obuchi.
Keizo Obuchi.
Yeah, and he was expressing a hope that a new joint declaration, building on that joint declaration, would be signed in the summit that's set to happen within the next couple of days.
But we do have to temper our expectations. Even if that meeting between Lee Jae-myung and Ishiba leads to another such document. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, that 1998 declaration, the Kim Dae-jung Obuchi declaration, what essentially that led to was Obuchi at the time also expressed remorse for Japan's role. And in return, what South Korea did was that it increased investments in Japan as well as increased imports of Japanese goods, which led to an improved relation between Seoul and Tokyo. So if we see something like that happening between the Lee and Ishiba summit that's coming up, sure, it might be great.
But what happens after?
Exactly. Ishiba is not a popular leader. The Liberal Democratic Party lost the elections and lost control of both houses of the Japanese parliament. The knives are out. People are thinking about who's going to replace Ishiba. And from my understanding, anyone who replaces Ishiba is not going to be as soft in South Korea as the current incumbent has been.
Right.
Now, they're not all hostile to South Korea. Some of them are because they're aligned with the hard right within the Japanese political spectrum. But even those who are not on the hard right, they're either just blasé about South Korea. They know South Korea exists, but they don't care much else beyond it. Or they are much more cautious. So there's a spectrum. but none of them are as soft towards South Korea as Ishiba has been.
Right. So just moving on then, so there's a U.S. summit just afterwards with President Donald Trump. So it'll be the first time that Lee Jae-myung will be meeting with Trump. It's not the first time that his ministers will be meeting with Donald Trump, but it will be the first time that the president meets. And that will happen on Monday, August 25th.
August 25th U.S. time.
Yeah. So it will be...
Tuesday our time.
So we're expecting quite a few things.
From my understanding, and Lee Jae-myung is going to give a speech after the summit meeting with Donald Trump at CSIS.
Yes.
And he's going to mention OPCON transfer as a wartime operational control transfer from the United States to South Korea. I don't know if that's feasible, but that's what Lee Jae-myung is reportedly going to talk about.
Right.
And he's also going to be talking about increased cooperation with the U.S. regarding North Korea's denuclearization and stuff of that nature. But that's foreign policy. I think foreign policy is going to be at least somewhat aligned. Now, regarding OPCON transfer, traditionally, the U.S. has been hesitant because they're not quite sure if South Korea has the capabilities yet to take over wartime operational control. But when it comes to Donald Trump himself, I think he would be more amenable to it than traditional U.S. presidents have been.
Sure, but it also, of course, raises the risk of making a little fire in USFK offices here. So we've had General Brunson, the commander of the CFC, the Combined Forces Command, and also the USFK, of course, saying that OPCON transfer, the terms that were agreed upon, we mentioned in a couple of episodes back as well, that the terms that were agreed upon during the 2014 agreement between the Park Geun-hye administration and the Obama administration were that there were three conditions, right? So you had the first, and of course you have the third condition of you need a strategically apt environment, or so to speak. And right now, is it a strategically apt environment?
Has it ever been?
Has it ever been? Right. So, and with North Korea and Russia joining hands during National Liberation Day.
And with China becoming more assertive, and with North Korea having much more nukes than they did in 2014.
Right. So how can we keep pushing for the goal of OPCON transfer, especially when South Korea's own Air Force is making quite high-profile mistakes, accidentally bombing a
civilian
town.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, civilian town, and also even breaching into Japanese airspace, where you had...
Or cybersecurity even.
Or cybersecurity, or even counterintelligence. So when you see those sort of mix and match figures coming into the plate here, it's not something that South Korea can just say, okay, bon appetit and gobble up, right? So we need to move forward or what experts are saying is that we need to move forward for the OPCON transfer in a much more feasible manner, where a goal of framing an OPCON transfer goal within Lee Jae-myung's 5-year term, when, of course, political reform also can't really happen in a 5-year term on the basis. So when you look at that from a strategic standpoint, I don't believe that there's much plus for South Korea strategically, but politically, sure.
Now, all politics is local. We have to keep in mind that when Lee Jae-myung is talking about OPCON transfers, he's not just talking to the United States.
He's talking directly to the people.
To the South Korean people. And this might be red meat to his base. I don't know if it is as red, if this meat is as red as it was under the Nomuyan administration, but I'm sure that there's some people in the progressive base who still like the sound of that. But regardless of who this message is for or whatever it is, it's undeniable that there are structural barriers toward an OPCON transfer. And so there might be that rhetoric, but we don't know if it will happen. The thing that I'm most concerned about is not OPCON transfer, but trade.
Me too.
So on July 31st, as we've mentioned before, we saw the trade agreement where U.S. tariffs went from 25 to 15%, South Korea investing $350 billion in the U.S., whatever investing means. But again, because this deal was nothing more than a handshake, it really depends on which side of the bed Donald Trump wakes up one day.
Right.
If he wakes up one day in a bad mood, and it happens to be the day when Lee Jae-myung is at the White House, Donald Trump can start going into South Korea being an ungrateful money machine country that's been taking advantage of America for the past 70 years or whatever.
Cornering Lee Jae-myung at the Oval Office.
Exactly. Now, as you have mentioned before, this is something that Lee Jae-myung knows will happen, and he and his people will likely have been training for every possible scenario.
I wouldn't sort of play down Lee Jae-myung's sort of playbook here. He is a very trained politician.
Yes.
And he has a way with words too. So I don't think he will be cornered to the extent that we've seen other world leaders go through in the Oval Office. I think he'll be watching that very intently with his own team. But of course, we also have the reintroduction of Kang Kyung-hwa, former South Korean foreign minister under the Moon administration. And
now, has she been confirmed as someone who's going to be the next ambassador yet?
Not just yet. So
Sure.
they're still looking for an agreement from the U.S. side, from Washington, so that they can announce her immediately afterwards. I'm sure we'll hear something just immediately before the trip actually comes into fruition. But Kang Kyung-hwa's return as a U.S. ambassador, or what's reported to be as a U.S. ambassador, what does that sort of mean for South Korea's trade negotiations and also relationship with the United States?
Well, that's the thing. Kang Kyung-hwa was a foreign minister under the Moon administration. So she's met with a lot of Trump 1.0 administration officials. She's met John Bolton. She's met Mike Pompeo. She's met with all of those people. But a lot of those people are no longer within the second administration.
Sure.
And this current administration is very different from the first one. So Kang Kyung-hwa has that prestige. She was a foreign minister. She used to work at the United Nations.
She's very experienced.
She is in charge of the Asia Society at the moment. So she is very well known. She's got the prestige. She's got the pedigree. But I'm not sure if that is sufficient for this current iteration of the Trump administration.
Why is
Because they don't really care about prestige all that much. Maybe Donald Trump cares about the prestige, but we also have to remember that Kang Kyung-hwa is a woman. And Donald Trump has shown repeatedly that he doesn't respect women all that much. We've seen how the way he treated Angela Merkel. So will Kang Kyung-hwa, an ambassador, not even the foreign minister or the prime minister, get treated any better than Angela Merkel was treated? I don't know if that's going to happen.
Right. But of course, we have to put into perspective that she has also been sort of spearheading quite a lot, or she has had experience spearheading quite a lot of Moon Jae-in's foreign policy, which was also a foreign policy that was not very well welcomed
By the Trump administration.
By the Trump administration. But she still figured to sort of harness quite a number of conversations and quite a good number of conversations with, of course, the first Trump administration. I don't think it's a long shot to sort of predict that she would very much pursue and might succeed with this administration too.
Looking to stay informed about South Korea's fast evolving political, business and cultural landscape? Join us on Korea Pro, the go-to resource for in-depth analysis expertly curated by top-tier professionals. And now you can pick the membership level that best suits your needs, thanks to our new subscription packages. Starting at just $199 annually, you can access daily analysis and our weekly podcast. Or try our premium membership package, which offers additional perks such as executive briefings, monthly reports and forecasts, networking receptions and event opportunities, as well as much, much more. To find the best fit for you, just head to signup.koreapro.org and become a member today.
All right, so that brings us to the week ahead. So as we've already been talking about these two summits coming up, President Lee Jae-myung is going to be meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Lee-Ishiba on August 23rd, and right after that, he's going to travel to the United States and meet with President Donald Trump on Monday. So those are two very big things that are coming up. And meanwhile, on the domestic front, tomorrow on Friday, the day when you are probably listening to this episode, the main opposition People Power Party is going to elect an actual leader this time and not an interim leadership. But at this point, does it matter who the next leader is, really? That party is, just 2 steps away from being flushed down the toilet as of this moment.
Right, okay.
And so we've got a lot of that going on.
And of course, next Wednesday, Seoul time on the 27th, we also have our Seoul Circuit, which
and who's moderating that discussion?
I will be.
Yeah, your first moderator.
And I will be joined by our guest speaker, President of the East Asia Institute, Mr. Son Yul, who will be, and we will be discussing ROK-Japan relations, which is quite timely, considering it will come right after the Shiba summit.
And all of this information will be sent to email inboxes by Monday via the Week Ahead newsletter, so if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We'll brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why it matters, delivered to your inbox every morning.
If you want to stay ahead of the curve, sign up for Korea Pro to get a full package of insights, from daily expert analysis to profiles, month in review, week ahead, and more.
And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
I'm Joon Ha.
And I'm John Lee, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.